Good morning, students. So today we would see the second part of digital circuits, which will be sequential circuits. And sequential circuits also we have two experiments, let's say two parts. The first part we'll be doing today. So the first part we have four sections, and I'll show this to you right now. So this part has four experiments. The first one we'll see a BJT inverter, and we'll compare it with a TTL inverter, and we'll look at the switching characteristics. The second experiment will be on a manual clock circuit, where we will use a NAND latch and two single pole switches we'll use to generate manual clock. Now the third part we would use a JK flip-flop, and we would verify the function table. This particular JK flip-flop is 74S112, which is a negative edge triggered JK flip-flop. Just both preset and clear. So that's why it's an interesting IC. And we would use the manual clock circuit to test this JK flip-flop. And finally, we would use the above JK flip-flop. We would use it as a toggle flip-flop. And then what we would do is we'll first verify its function table, and then one of the major uses of sequential circuits is it as a counter. So therefore we would use this toggle flip-flop as a mode 2 counter, and we will see how fast or high it can go. And also finally we will measure the propagation delay of this particular flip-flop, which is an important parameter when you talk about sequential circuits. So these are the four parts of this particular experiment. Now first part, let's look at the BJT inverter, and let's compare it with the TTL inverter. So this BJT inverter circuit diagram is shown here. We are using BC547B. It's an NPN transistor and a very popular transistor. So we have just used that. Now in this circuit we have used a collector resistance RC of 10 kilo ohms and also base resistance RB of 10 kilo ohms, and the power supply is 5 volt. So that way it's kind of compatible to TTL. Now we would see the important things to note here is we would look at the output, especially the low to high transition. We'll see that it will be very slow. And also you will see there is a large delay, but we would see that the V out, the high to low transition, is reasonably fast. And let's see this particular one. Now what we have done here is, right now we have used the clock, the input to the BJT inverter is a 10 kilohertz clock going from 0 to 5 volt. Now on this DSO you are able to see on the top you are seeing the input waveform, which is going from 0 to 5, and the bottom you are seeing the inverter, the output of the BJT inverter. Now I hope you are able to see that when this particular BJT inverter is going from high to low, it almost looks instantaneous. But look at the low to high transition of VO, and you see right here there is a delay. Right now the scale for the x-axis is 10 microseconds per centimeter, and I can see that even without expanding the scale I am able to see a delay of almost about 4 microseconds, which is very high. Now what I want to do now is I want to increase the frequency to, right now it's 10 kilohertz. Let me now choose 50 kilohertz, and let's see what will happen. Now you can see, let me expand the scale, and now you are able to see the delay very well. You are able to see that there is a very large delay. So you can see that here the high to low transition is fairly fast, but the low to high transition is a huge delay. You are able to see that very well. And right now the scale is 2.5 microseconds. So almost 2.5 microseconds is the kind of delay. It is very high. And you can see this. Now let me increase the frequency to 100 kilohertz, and let's see what will happen. 100 kilohertz I am choosing now. Now you are able to see the BJT output, BJT inverter output is extremely bad. In the sense, the delay is very high. So let me just once again show it again. So you are able to see that the delay is too much. Okay, the delay is very high. Now let me keep increasing the frequency. Let me keep increasing, and you are able to see that now is 150 kilohertz, and you are able to see that the inverter, this is definitely not useful as a inverter. You are able to see that the high to low, there is a huge delay here. And why is that delay? It's because this delay is primarily because of the BJT being in saturation, and high to low, even though the input has gone low, because of the excess charge stored in the base, the transistor continues to remain in saturation. And then this low to high transition is so slow, it's slow because of the RC time constant. We have an R value of 10 kilo ohm, and you have parasitic capacitance, wiring. So typically at least about 20 to 50 PF is always there in our wiring and all. So these two put together is the problem. Now let's see something very interesting. What I want to do now is, in this particular BJT inverter circuit, what I am going to do is, right now I am going to put a capacitor across RB, and let's look at watch the output, what is going to happen. First time I am going to put a capacitor which is a 0.1 microfarad I am going to put right now, and watch what will happen. Yeah, so you are able to see now what has happened here is, let me try to you are able to see now the very same circuit just by putting a capacitor. So right now the scale is 0 to 5. So you are able to see that the delay has drastically come down. And something very interesting which is occurring here is, when the input goes from high to low, you see that even though we did not give anything negative, we see that the output goes also negative, even though the power supply is only from 0 to 5 has gone negative. Why is it happening? This is because of the capacitor. We know that the capacitor, across a capacitor, the voltage cannot change instantaneously. So what has happened here is, here you try to change the voltage from high to low instantaneously, and that has been transferred directly to the base, which forced the transistor to come out of saturation very quickly. Therefore the delay has come down drastically. Now let me put another value of capacitor. So this is right now 0.1 microfarad. Let me change it and put a 100 picofarad capacitor. Let me try to put it, and let's see what will happen. Now you are able to see that this particular waveform definitely is much better. Let me slightly expand, and you are able to see that the negative transition has decreased. Now what is the importance of what we are seeing? This particular, in this circuit here, now this capacitor value has to be chosen carefully, but still whatever you do, you see that the BJT inverter has a problem. So in the next, which is the sequential circuit, when we do the part B, that will be the next one when we talk about counters, there I'll show you another very major application of what we are seeing, where I'll show you the operation of probes, CRF probes, where the same principle is used. So right now here what we have done is, we have tried to match this RB into that capacitor, let me call it CB, RB CB product. We try to equate to the input base resistance times whatever capacitance which is associated with the accumulation of charges. So same effect next time we would, when we do the experiment, we will also show you in a voltage probe how this particular principle is used, and which is an extremely important application of what we are seeing here. Now what I want to show you right now is, we would compare this with a TTL inverter. Now before I do that, let me also show you, we have for this particular experiment, we have used a BNC to BNC cable here, a very good cable here, and we have used a very short wire. Why we have done it? because when you are working above 1 megahertz, your wiring need to be extremely small, and that's why we try to make it as small as possible. But if you want to go about 10 megahertz or 20 megahertz, it need to be even smaller. But we would see this later when we go to higher frequency. So right now what I am going to do, I am going to apply, so I am just going to take this particular output and just going to put it on the, what I am going to do is I am just connecting the output of the TTL inverter. Okay, so right now what you are seeing is the TTL inverter. So let me, so let's see first of all the TTL inverter, how it works. So you see that for the same frequency without changing anything, the TTL inverter output is much better. Let me go higher. Let me go to 500 kilohertz, and this is the TTL inverter. 74LS04 we have used. So right now the frequency is 500 kilohertz, and you see that it works very well. But you would see that if I go back to my TTL circuit in my BJT inverter, if I go back to my BJT inverter, you would see that the BJT inverter, you can see that it's extremely bad. And if I remove that capacitor, you see that the BJT inverter output is permanently zero. So you can see that the BJT inverter therefore, and only if I reduce the frequency, the BJT inverter would you can see that now at a much lower frequency, about 160, just coming. So this is just to illustrate to you, and even with the capacitor, when we used it, we found that it is not so useful. So right now what we showed was, when we are using a TTL inverter, 250 kilohertz, no problem. Let's go to 500 kilohertz, which I showed you. Let me once again do it. When I expand it, is quite good. Let me go to 1 megahertz now. Let me go to 1 megahertz. Yeah. So right now it's 1 megahertz, and you are able to see that the signal is kind of slightly disturbed. But there is no. I want you to note down this is what you have this is the input clock which you are giving to the TTL, and what you see is out. So you can see that the high to low transition of the TTL inverter and the low to high transition, you can see that they are almost instantaneous. There is a slight delay. So let me go to now, let's say at the most, let's say I need to go to that, I can put about 2 megahertz. Beyond that I think I should not do, but we'll try. Yeah, so this is right now 2 megahertz, and still you see that it's quite good. Okay, and when you compare this, so you can see that this high to low and low to high transitions are quite good, but there is some slight delay will be there. So one of the things you must, what I want to show you from here is, when you want to go above 1 megahertz, you need to be very careful. We will do that a little later when we try to go as high as possible. So why is the TTL inverter much better? So that we can see from this particular TTL inverter circuit which we covered, which I showed you in the last lab lecture. Now the interesting thing about a TTL is the output. Look at the output side. The output, they use the word totem pole, is what is called a totem pole, or another word is push pull. So we saw that in the BJT inverter, the high to low transitions were not a problem. So you see a similar thing is happening here. The high to low, this particular transistor will go into saturation. That's what happening in a TTL. But the low to high was the biggest problem in a BJT inverter. Here, that what will happen is, when the output is going from low to high, in a BJT inverter, it was across a resistor. Here, this transistor is what is going to, so this will be like an active load, which will be a very small value, and that's why you are able to see that on the DSO, the low to high transition is also equally good, and meaning equally fast. So this just tries to kind of give you an idea about the kind of comparison between BJT inverter and TTL inverter. This tells you why TTL inverter is very popular. And one of the things I want to emphasize is that when you use TTL circuits, you need to be very careful. You can use a standard TTL up to about 20 megahertz. This is because even this particular circuit is also it goes into saturation, but this resistance which is put here limits the saturation. So in a standard TTL, you can go up to about 20 megahertz, and there are other families which we will see later, which can go much higher. So very careful when you wire TTL circuits, use short interconnecting wires, and up to about 1 megahertz maybe it's okay, but beyond 1 megahertz, when you are working on a breadboard, you need to use very short wires, or you need to use printed circuit boards or PCBs. That's the best way to get the best performance. So now we look at the logic probe circuit, which we used once again in the previous time we used it. We will use the same thing for testing the outputs of the JK flip-flop, which we are going to see. So it's nothing but just a NOT gate whose output we connect through a resistance to an LED, so that when the input is high, output will be 0 and the LED will be able to glow. So this is what we have here is the manual clock circuit, which is very useful for testing our JK flip-flop. Now this is also, you can think of this as a set reset flip-flop or a set bar reset bar flip-flop. So what we have done is we have put two switches here, a single pole switch. So this is this part you are familiar. This is a NAND latch. We will use a 7400. Two of the gates from 7400 we have used there, and you can see that normally when the switch is not pressed, both the inputs are high. So when you don't do anything, both inputs are high, and we know that for a NAND latch, when both inputs are high, we know the previous state will continue. So when you press this particular switch, what would happen is you are applying a logical 0 to pin number 1, the first NAND gate, which will force the output to be immediately go to 1. And we know that from our NAND latch, then this will go to 0. Similarly, when I press the reset switch, when I press it and when the input is made 0, we know that Q bar will become 1 or Q will become 0. So this is very useful for one. First is to learn this particular set reset flip-flop, how it works. Secondly, we would see that we can use this as a manual clock circuit. So let me explain to you the manual clock circuit which we just now saw. So these are the two switches. I have called them set bar, reset bar inputs. Okay. So what I am going to do is I am going to first press the set switch to set the Q to 1, and when I press the reset, it will get reset. Now what we have done is we have connected an LED probe at the output there. So let me now press set. So when I press this set switch or the set bar switch, what is going to happen is you are applying a 0 to the NAND latch input. So you can see that when I do that, the output is now high. Now what I am going to do is I will press the reset input or the reset bar input. I will just press it. When I press it, it becomes 0, and that will reset the Q to 0. So this is very useful. So when I press set switch, it goes high. When I press the reset, it goes low. So this is extremely useful as a manual clock circuit. So I see that when I press this, what is happening is output Q is going from 0 to 1, and I press the next one, what is happening is output is now high, it will go from high to 0. So low to high will happen here, and it stays high till I press this when it comes from high to low. So this is very useful as a manual clock when we test our JK flip-flop. So for our study, we would use 74S112 JK flip-flop. So this S stands for Schottky Technologies. Therefore, this particular JK flip-flop can go all the way to at least 80 megahertz. It's a very fast JK flip-flop. Let's look at the function table. Look at the inputs there. You would see that there are 4 inputs, what are called PR and CLR, or preset and clear inputs. These are what are called asynchronous inputs, and then you have a clock input. Then you have J and K, which are called synchronous inputs. So we would verify whether it works properly. So what is the purpose of the asynchronous inputs, which are preset and clear? So what would happen is And mind you, looking at the table, we see that when your preset is made 0, input is made 0, and when the clear input is kept high, irrespective of whatever is the clock or the JK inputs, you would see that output will go high. Q will be high and Q bar will be low. Now when PR or the preset input is high and the clear input is 0, irrespective of whatever other inputs, clock, J and K inputs, you would see that Q will be low and Q bar will be high. Now the other possibility which you should never use is both preset input and clear input. Both of them, if you keep them low, what is going to happen is irrespective of all their inputs, both will be high. So these are never used. So the purpose of the preset or the clear input is to make the output either high or low irrespective of the clock. So that's why they are called asynchronous inputs. Now JK are what are called the synchronous inputs. So important to notice that only when the clock is active, outputs will change. So let's look at the table here. So this is important to notice that this is a negative edge triggered JK flip-flop. Therefore all transitions happen at the negative edge. So if J and K are both low, what would happen is the notation they are used from the data sheet is Q naught bar, meaning whatever state it was will continue there, or it's a kind of a hold state. Now when your J is high and when K is low, at the next clock transition, the high to low transition, you would see that the Q will go high and the Q bar will be low. Similarly, when J is kept low and K is kept high, at the next negative clock transition, the output will go low and the Q bar output will go high. If you keep both J and K 1, then what would happen is at the next negative edge of the clock, the outputs will toggle, meaning if Q was 0, it will become 1, if Q was 1, it will become 0, and so on. Now if you keep clock high, irrespective of whatever your J and K, your states will continue. This is very important. So this is a negative, all outputs change only at the negative edge, very important. So if clock is high, nothing is going to happen. And important to notice that most of the time normal operation you would keep both preset and clear inputs high. So there are two JK flip-flops inside this particular IC 74S112. We would use only one of them. And let me also show you a few things about this particular JK flip-flop. It has 16 pins are there. Pin number 8 is ground. Pin number 16 is VCC, and VCC, as we know, being a TTL IC, it will be 5 volt. So that's important thing. Let's now test the function table. So let's test the function table of the JK flip-flop. So what we have done is the JK flip-flop is here, and what we have done is the JK flip-flop output we have put a logic probe. So this particular LED would glow when JK output Q is equal to 1, and this particular two switches, as we know, is basically our manual clock. So right now you can see these three green LEDs. They are indicating the inputs to the JK flip-flop. So the extreme left is a clear bar input, the next one is a preset bar, and the last two are J and K. So right now, as the LED is glowing to indicate that all the these are these four switches here, so all the inputs are now high. So let's see something interesting happening. So what I am going to do now is I am going to operate. So the clock is connected, the manual clock is right now connected as the clock of the JK flip-flop. So what I am going to do right now is I am going to use the manual clock. So right now manual clock is 0, I will set it. Okay, you can see that nothing is happening, even though J and K are both 1 and preset bar and clear bar are both high. Nothing is happening to the JK flip-flop. Now what I am going to do, I am going to reset. So the clock is now high. Now I am going to reset. So you can see that now the JK, it was previously 0, Now the JK output has become 1 and it has toggled. So let me again now, so right now clock is 0. Let me set it so the clock has gone high and the JK output has not changed. This time let me, so right now the clock is high. Now when I press this particular switch, the reset particular switch here in the manual clock, the clock will go from high to low and the LED, the Q output should toggle from high to low. Let's see that. So when I do that, it's happening. So let me keep doing. So it's very interesting. When I press this, the clock goes high. When I put this, the clock goes low, and the Q will keep on toggling. So it's very nice to see this. So right now the toggling action, you can see it extremely well. Now let's test the, so right now the Q output is 0 and the clock is right now Q is 0. So let me use the asynchronous inputs now. So right now you can see both clear bar and preset bar inputs are both high. So and the Q output is now 0. So let me use the preset, which is the second one. Let me use the preset bar input, which is the second switch here. And right now it is high. Let me make it low by enabling and see what will happen to the JK. So you can see that when I made the preset bar input equal to 0, you can see the output is preset or it has gone high. Okay, now let me take it back to high. What I am going to do now is I am going to now clear it. So right now Q is high and I am going to use the, right now the clear bar input is high, I am going to make it low. So what should happen is the JK Q output should get cleared and you are able to see that is happening. So this is very nice, and as we said, you are not supposed to, you should use only one of them, either preset or clear, and normal operation both of them should be kept high the way it is. Now let's test the JK table. We already tested the toggle case, let's test the others. So right now the Q output is 0, so let me make J is equal to 1, K is equal to 0. So right now J is 1, let me make K 0. So right now J is 1, K is 0, and let me watch carefully. Right now the clock is 0, so I am setting it and the output is not has not changed. Why? Because it will, output transition will happen, output will change only the negative transition. That will happen when I press this reset switch here in the manual clock and clock goes from high to low. Right now clock is high. When I press this, yeah, you are able to see that J is equal to 1, K is equal to 0, and the correct clock edge output has changed. Now what I want to do is I want to make now my J, I want to make 0 and I want to make K is equal to 1. And again you can see I changed it, but nothing happened to the output. This is the most important thing to remember, because that's why they are called synchronous inputs. Whereas we saw that both preset and clear, irrespective of the clock, output change. So this is important thing to notice here. Whatever changes you make to J and K will take effect only at the active clock edge. Right now, so J is equal to 0, K is equal to 1. Therefore, at the next negative edge, the output should get clear. Let's see that. Right now I am pressing the set switch, which made the clock go from low to high. Now when I am pressing the reset switch, it has cleared. So it's beautifully is working. Now we already tested the toggle and again let me check the 0 0. So that is basically, let me make both J is equal to 0. Right now J is 0, K is 1. Let me make J is equal to 0, K is equal to 0. So now it should hold. Whatever I do to the clock, nothing should happen, and we are beautifully seeing that. Okay, each negative edges, nothing is happening. So the value is holding. Now let's go back to that 1 1 which we showed it. Let's see it once again. So J is equal to 1, K is equal to 1, and preset and clear inputs are both high. Now what should happen is, right now Q is 0 and clock is gone from 0 to high, and when I press from the reset switch, you can see that it is toggled. Okay, now when I set it, So right now the clock is high, but now change when I press the reset, it has toggled. So it's beautifully, it's working. So that way we have verified all the functions of the JK flip-flop. So this is the last part of this particular section. So what I am showing you is the toggle flip-flop. So JK flip-flop with both J and K kept as 1, and both preset bar and clear bar inputs kept as 1. So when we do that, this works like a toggle flip-flop, meaning for every clock input there, or in every negative edge of the clock, the output will keep on toggling. So this is an excellent circuit, and this also works like what is called a mode 2 counter or a divide by 2 counter. There are 2 states for this JK flip-flop, and that amounts to a mode 2 counter. We'll see that in a minute. Now, so important to notice that the Q changes at the negative edges. So let us see the waveform which we are able to see on the DSO. Right now the frequency we have chosen as clock is 1 megahertz, and you can see that at the negative edges, what you have on the top is the clock input, what you have on the bottom is the output of the JK flip-flop, 74S112 output. So you can see that at every negative edge output toggles. So therefore you can see that why it's called divide by 2 counter, because for corresponding to 2 clocks cycles here, you have 1 cycle here. Okay. So you can see that when you go from this 0 to this 0, there are 2 clock periods. So therefore you can think of this as a divide by 2 counter. So you can see that also very well. The channel 1, the frequency is 1 megahertz here, and channel 2, the frequency as per the DSO also measures it as 500 kilohertz. So the good thing is an excellent divide by 2, and this timing on and off will be exactly half. This was a problem we faced in the stable multivibrator we used in using op-amp. We saw that the TH and TL are not identical. Here will be identical, exactly same. What I want to do now is, want to increase the frequency. So before that, let me just show you how we have wired the circuit here. So it is important to notice that we have used very short wires, and we have used a very special cable, and we have tried to make it as small as possible. And let me now increase the frequency. Right now is 1 megahertz. Let me go to 5 megahertz. Yeah. So what I have is right now is 5 megahertz is your clock input, and you are able to see that the input is 5, output is 2.5 megahertz. But at the same time, you are able to see now that kind of a ringing happening on this line. So this is why I was telling you that once you start working above 1 megahertz, you need to be very careful. These small wires, even the probe, ground leads have to be as small as possible. So you can see even at 5 megahertz, you're able to see is kind of noisy. Let me go to 10 megahertz. So I'm going to put now 10 megahertz. So this is 10 megahertz is the clock there at the input clock. So the channel 1 is 10 megahertz, channel 2 is 5 megahertz. But you can still, the important thing to notice here is, let's see this well. So you can see that still it's reasonably well, and there is some propagation delay, which we'll talk about a little later. Okay, so right now is 10 megahertz. Let me now go to 15 megahertz. So right now the input frequency is 15 megahertz, and you can see that it's okay. But now you are able to see the ringing on the line is increasing. Let me go to 20 megahertz, and I hope it still works with kind of wiring we have. Should be okay. Let's see, 20 megahertz. Yeah, good. So the input frequency is clock frequency is 20 megahertz, and the output is 10 megahertz. Now this basically shows you how it works like a divide by 2 counter. Now one of the important things you need to notice is here is that the VCC line gets corrupted because of switching. In a TTL as opposed to an op-amp, in an op-amp when you are using it as an amplifier, the current drawn from the VCC line is always constant. Therefore the power supply doesn't get corrupted. But unfortunately in TTL, the current drawn when the gate or the flip-flop when it is high or low, based on that the current drawn is different. Therefore, you have a problem. Now these wires which we are using here, think of them, they have some finite amount of inductance, and you have a problem of now L di by dt, because of which you will definitely get quite high switching noise. Now I want to show you this switching noise, which let's see this. So right now what I am going to do is, I am going to connect the channel 2 to the power supply line. Okay, and what I am going to do now is, I will just change the trigger and change it to channel 1. Okay, now what I am going to do is, I am going to put channel 2 into AC coupling mode, and let's make it more sensitive. Now you are able to see that this is the amount of noise you have on the power supply line. Okay, so right now the kind of noise you have is almost about 200 millivolt of peak to peak noise you have. Now right now actually I have put a capacitor here between VCC and ground. If I remove it, you are able to see that there is a huge amount of switching noise. So this is something important to notice. So now the peak to peak noise which you are getting here is the particular y-axis channel 2 is 100 millivolts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 6.5. Okay, 650 millivolt of switching noise is there just on the power supply line. Just by putting a capacitor between VCC and ground, you would see that that particular noise drastically comes down. So this is something very important to notice here. Whenever you work on a TTL circuit, especially when you are working on a switching circuit, extremely important to put a capacitor, a decoupling capacitor we call it, between the VCC and ground line as close to the IC as possible. Now let's come to the last part of the circuit, where I want to show you the propagation delay of a JK flip-flops. Okay, we already saw that we need to use very low wires actually, but let me now come back. Let me put this channel 2 back to AC mode, sorry, DC mode. Let me put it back to DC mode, and let me so what I want to show you is, basically what I will do is, we will measure the, I want to measure, right now it's on the VCC line. Let me show you basically what you would get. So what I want to do, I want to, let me just change the triggering to channel 2. Okay, so what I want, let me reduce the frequency. Let me reduce the frequency to 10 megahertz to make more clear. Okay, now the frequency is 10 megahertz. So now what I want to show you is basically I want to measure the propagation delay. So let's adjust it. Okay, so you are able to see now. So right now you can see the kind of roughly the propagation delay. Let me just expand it a little further. You can see the propagation delay. So right now I can expand it further. Yeah, I think this is better. Yeah, let me show you a proper place to measure. Yeah, this is good. So right now we are able to, let me just lower both of them, both the channels. Let me lower both of them, and so that we can make it roughly. Okay, now we are able to see the propagation delay. The 10 nanoseconds is what is the unit here. So you can see that you need to measure at the 50% point. So roughly you are getting almost about somewhere around almost 10. I think it's about almost 9 and 9 or around somewhere around I'm able to get. So this is the propagation delay you're talking about. Now as per the specification of 74S112 JK flip-flop, the propagation delay as per the specification is about 7 to 9 nanoseconds, which we are getting it. Now this is because this is an S gate. If you use a normal 74S or a LS112 or a simple standard TTL JK flip-flop, you would see that the delay would be the propagation delay will be at least twice, maybe typically about 20 nanoseconds. So this is a good way of, the way this is how you would measure the propagation delay. So 74112, this particular JK flip-flop will be used, can work at least up to about 80 megahertz because it uses Schottky TTL technology where it prevents transistor from going deep into saturation. That's how it prevents. Finally, before I close, I want to thank two important people. One is my fellow colleague in the Well Lab, Amit Shetty, and he has been working closely. So a lot of good ideas came from Amit, and I am very thankful to Amit. And also Anil Gawai, who is shooting this video and going to edit it. So thank you very much, students listening, and also special thanks to both Amit and Anil. Thank you.